It was the bitter winter of 1776. The American Revolution had been raging for more than a year, but the cause of independence seemed more fragile than ever. Washington's army, weary and dispirited, was struggling to survive. Men huddled in damp tents, shivering in the freezing wind. Many had already abandoned the army, returning home to their families, believing that the fight was hopeless. Supplies were scarce, food was rationed, and morale was dangerously low. Washington knew that unless something drastic happened, the dream of a free America could die before it had truly begun. Across the Delaware River, the British and their allies, including German mercenaries called Hessians, were confident of victory. The Hessians, hired by the British Crown, were disciplined, well-fed, and well-armed. They had been stationed in Trenton, a small but strategically important town in New Jersey. They believed that the war was nearly over. After all, the Americans were exhausted and scattered. Few suspected that Washington was about to attempt what would later be remembered as one of the boldest moves in military history. Washington spent days planning. Every detail had to be perfect. The idea was simple yet dangerous. Cross the icy Delaware River under the cover of night, reach Trenton before dawn, and launch a surprise attack. It was a gamble. Failure could mean the destruction of his army, and perhaps the end of the Revolution. But Washington was not a man to be deterred by fear. He gathered his generals and explained the plan in hushed tones. They studied maps, marked routes, and discussed contingencies. The night of December 25th, 1776 arrived. Snow fell steadily, covering the frozen landscape in a white blanket. The wind howled across the Delaware, and the river itself was partly frozen, with jagged chunks of ice threatening to crush boats. Soldiers, some barefoot, carried supplies and weapons, their faces pale from cold. Washington rode among them, speaking quietly, giving words of encouragement, and reminding them of the importance of what they were about to do. "Keep going," he urged. "Victory is near. For our families, for our freedom, we must succeed." The crossing was treacherous. Boats struggled against the current, ice scraped against their sides, and the men's muscles burned from exertion in the freezing cold. Some soldiers slipped, their boots soaked, faces streaked with frostbite. Officers shouted orders to maintain discipline and keep the boats moving. There was tension in the air. Every moment could be the moment of disaster. Yet Washington remained calm, a pillar of resolve, his presence inspiring courage in even the most frightened men. As the hours passed, the soldiers trudged through snow and ice, carrying their weapons, drums, and cannons. The wind bit through their coats, and snow stung their eyes, but the thought of a surprise attack kept them moving. Washington paused for a moment to look over the troops. He knew that morale was fragile, that fear could take hold at any moment. He spoke to a group of soldiers quietly, telling stories of valor, of past victories, and of the dream they were fighting for. Slowly, a sense of determination replaced despair. Finally, in the early hours of December 26th, the army reached the banks of the Delaware. Exhausted but resolute, they prepared for the attack. The plan was simple: move swiftly into Trenton, catch the Hessians off guard, and overwhelm them before they could organize a defense. The air was still, and an eerie calm seemed to descend over the river. It was as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for what was about to happen. When the Americans entered Trenton, the Hessians were unprepared. They had been celebrating Christmas, expecting a quiet morning. The sound of drums, the shouts of Washington's men, and the clash of steel sent shock through the town. Soldiers rushed to their posts, but the element of surprise was total. Within an hour, more than 900 Hessians were captured. The Americans suffered very few casualties, a testament to Washington's careful planning and the courage of his troops. This victory was small compared to the great battles of history, yet its impact was enormous. News spread quickly. The revolution was not lost. Morale soared among the American forces, and the people saw that Washington was not only a determined leader, but also a bold and clever strategist. the world began to take notice. The daring crossing of the Delaware had shown that even in desperate times, courage and clever planning could change the course of history. The victory at Trenton renewed hope. It inspired more soldiers to join the cause, strengthened the commitment of those who had remained, and reminded the American people why they were fighting for independence. Washington himself understood the importance of this moment, not just as a military maneuver, but as a symbol of resilience, determination, and faith in freedom. In the years to come, historians would look back at that cold winter night and marvel at the audacity of the plan. Soldiers would tell tales of icy waters, bitter winds, and the burning determination that carried them to victory. And for every American who believed in the dream of liberty, the crossing of the Delaware became a legend, a story of courage against all odds, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, hope could prevail.